Hello, my name is Cole Anderson, and today I will be speaking about one of the greatest American speakers in United States history, Colonel Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was born in 1858 in New York City and lived a very exciting 60 years. He was the son of Theodore Roosevelt Sr., an early philanthropist and a businessman in the glass industry, and Martha Stewart "Mittie" Bullock, a well-known socialite. Today I will share more about some of the touching speeches and the reasons why Mr. Roosevelt has become one of the most exceptional speakers in the entire world, and the journey throughout his life and his political career where he made amazing speeches and ended up creating and preserving the United States national parks and many national monuments. Roosevelt began attending Harvard in 1876 and graduated four years later, Phi Beta Kappa, ranked 22nd out of 177 students. He later on continued to Columbia Law School, where he began to write the novel The Naval War of 1812. Roosevelt was elected to the New York State Assembly in 1882, 1883, and 1884. In 1883, he gives the speech, The Duties of an American Citizen. During this speech is by far one of Roosevelt's most touching speeches of all time. All of these were reasons that he put into use as he described the American and what their duties were to be a good American citizen. One of the quotes from Duties of American Citizenship: "No man can be a good citizen who is not a good husband and a good father, who is not honest in his dealings with other men and women, faithful to his friends, and fearless in the presence of his foes, who has not got a sound heart, a sound mind, and a sound body." These are many of the memorable things that he says during these speeches. Another quote that he has: "Nothing worth gaining is ever gained without effort. You can go no more have freedom without striving and suffering for it then you can win success as a banker or a lawyer without labor and effort." Another quote from this speech: "If freedom is worth having, if the right of self-government is a valuable right, then the one and the other must be retained exactly as our forefathers acquired them, by labor, and especially by labor in organization. That is a combination of our fellows who have the same interests and the same principles." Roosevelt showed many of the democratic styles of leadership, even though he was a Republican. When listening to Roosevelt's speeches, I noticed that he used all of the basics when preparing a speech, all from the beginning of choosing the topics, defining a purpose, and stating a thesis. Continuing on to the next stage of Theodore Roosevelt's life is the Spanish-American War and the beginning of the Rough Riders. The Rough Riders was the first volunteer cavalry. On July 1st, 1898, he became known for taking Kettle and San Juan Hill. This was in the War of Cuba. These amazing feats that the accomplishments and the experiences lead to a couple more memorable publishings and speeches. One is the publishing from the Outlook in 1900, and the other is a speech given at the Hamilton Club in Chicago on April 10th, 1899. A couple of important things from the publishings. One was from the Strenuous Life. "No country can long endure if its foundations are not laid deep in the material prosperity from which comes thrift. From business, energy, and enterprise, from hard, unsparing effort in the fields of industry, activity, but neither was any nation ever yet truly great if it relied upon material prosperity alone. All honor must lie paid to the architects of our material prosperity, to the great captains of industry who have built our factories and our railroads, to the strong men who toil for wealth with brain and hand. For great is the debt of the nation to these are their kind." Colonel Roosevelt was elected vice president in 1901. McKinley was shot 6 months later. Roosevelt became president. He promised to continue the former president's policies during the first term. During the second term, many parts of this changed. He called for strength and decency. He developed 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, and 150 national forests. He also became the first American to win a Nobel Peace Prize for his involvement in the Treaty of Portsmouth, which ended with the Russo-Japanese War. A couple of known speeches from this time were the one-of-a-kind Square Deal. One of the quotes from the Square Deal is, "We must act upon the motto of all for each and each for all. There must be ever present in our minds the fundamental truth that in a republic such as ours, that the only safety is to stand neither for nor against any man, against he is rich or because he is poor, because he is engaged in one occupation or another, because he works with his brains or because he works with his hands. He must treat each man on his worth and merits as a man. We must see that each is given a square deal, because he is entitled to no more and should receive no less." When Theodore Roosevelt analyzed the audience based on purpose, demographics, attitudes, beliefs, and values, he showed many of the main staples of communication itself. Speeches based on the occasion, meaning, time, place, or expectations are all following this manner. After good old Teddy, which he hated to be called, was out of presidency, many amazing things happened. He took South American expeditions, he had a hand in the U.S. going into World War I, and he also had an assassination attempt against him. This turned out to be one of his greatest speeches. Even after being shot by a barkeeper in Madison, Wisconsin on October 14, 1914, he continued to speak. He spoke for over an hour. The bullet traveled through his steel eyeglass case and into his 50-page manuscript that he had prepared for the speech. But he continued to speak. And in this speech, his leading statement was, "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. But unfortunately, I had my manuscript, so you see I was going to make a long speech. And there is a bullet, a bullet went through, and it probably saved me. It's going into my heart, it's going to my heart right now. The bullet is in me now, so that I cannot make